is Zach Prusak, who is the Florida Fire Manager for the Nature Conservancy. And he's been working with fire and fire management, ecosystem management, restoration, training, and education in the state of Florida for 26 years?
26 years.
26 years, so wealth of information. Welcome, Zach.
Thank you, Lita, very much. Yeah, 26 years, and it's funny because when you start doing this, when you're in college and you take your ecology classes and everything is so nice and simple, the older you get, to realize that things are so complex and so gray, and the fact that everyone has a voice to say in this, and everyone has something valuable to contribute to this process. And it's so great that these presentations are set in this range management forum, where the truth of it is, I mean, in Florida, some of the best lands that were acquired for conservation and managed were managed by the folks that wear the cowboy hats. I mean, they were the ones that stood up to the Dixie Crusaders in Florida that were trying to stop fire and told them, you guys are crazy, get out of here. They kept fire going. That then allowed for this passing of the torch, literally and metaphorically, to a bunch of folks out of college who really wanted to go out there and light the woods on fire because that's a cool thing to do. Anyone would tell you that. True confession, when I was 7 years old, I lit the dunes on Daytona Beach on fire. And it was a great thing. So fire has a huge role to play in restoring all of these ecosystems that we are concerned about. And so today what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in for two folks that were supposed to be here. Brian Pell, who works up in our Apalachicola Bluffs and Ravines Preserves. If there's anything in this presentation that you have questions on that I don't know, which probably is going to be a lot, email Brian, bpelk@tnc.org. He is fantastic. He's just a wealth of information. But like a lot of us Floridians here, we freaked out when it snowed in Florida last month, and he's probably still stuck on I-10. I-10 is still closed. We didn't know how to handle it. So what I'm going to talk about in this presentation is the incredible success we've had in our 20-year goal to basically restore ground cover. If we're talking about these longleaf ecosystems, sometimes we do focus on the trees a lot, but the truth of it is the ground cover drives both the diversity and the flammability of these systems. Fire moves so much better if you have a nice contiguous ground cover, and wiregrass is a huge part of that. Just a little quick map. Apalachicola Bluffs and Ravines Preserve. This is located about 45 minutes due west of Tallahassee. Who here has been to ABRP, by the way? Cool place, don't you think? Yeah, those of you who are from Florida like I was born in Miami, I didn't think we had any mountains or anything, or ravines, so I went up there and it was like a big cliff. Like, wow. So it's a very diverse landscape up there with some sort of remnants from the Appalachians and Florida ecosystems. And so the Conservancy acquired that, back in the 80s to basically preserve the ravine systems, these really, really rare ravine systems with all kinds of cool plants and animals that exist only in the ravines. And oh yeah, there's some sandhill on that. And this was a picture taken, let's see, I want to make sure I get the date right on this because it's pretty cool. This was taken 1959. That isn't marker lines drawn on that, those are all windrows. So those are all trees planted on this system. The finger stuff are actually, those are the ravines. It actually empties out into the Apalachicola River. And so there's this amazing ecosystem of water flow through these sandhills to these ravines down and out to the river. And so this landscape was basically cut up and planted in trees. So when the Conservancy got this land, they realized, wow, the ravines are great, but we probably should do something about these windrows. And so they realized that the steep head ravine communities, the health of those communities actually depended upon really healthy sandhill habitat just up from the ravines. If the sandhills burned, it actually maintained a decent ecosystem which actually helped the ravines function better. So how do you actually restore sandhills? You got to get wiregrass back into it. And as you saw in that previous slide, there wasn't hardly anything left of natural ground cover. Everything was stripped down, trees were planted. So this is a picture back in the 80s. The Nature Conservancy tried to experiment with maybe trying to collect a few seeds, use this gas-powered leaf blower, blow some seeds onto the land, try to get that wiregrass going. And one thing that we found out, just like a lot of other people in Florida found out, that wiregrass seeds really respond, or the wiregrass seeds very well in response to fire. And a weird thing to think of in the 70s, it wasn't really well known. Wiregrass actually was thought of as being sterile. It doesn't produce seed. It only grew through spreading through rhizomes. Because back then there wasn't a lot of growing season fire going on. So when growing season fire was implemented, this plant started seeding profusely. And so one of the things that we found out along with the Florida Park Service, and I think folks at UF too a long time ago, was that this grass needed to be burned in growing season, and the seeds should, we should have some way to plant these things effectively. So 20 years later, here's what we do now. We've got this incredible wiregrass machine functioning incredibly well up at Apalachicola Blessing Ravines. And Vic, I don't know, do you guys take some of our seed on Apalachicola? But you guys grow your own too.
No. Of course, we have forest service, it's all done.
Okay, good. Yeah, so there's seed grown on our site now that the Forest Service actually uses to help restore some of their sandhill, and they're really, really beautiful national forests, even due west of the bluffs. So basically, the seed is sown, or the seed is actually gathered by the big grasslander, probably in the fall or so, quickly sorted, dried, and then put on the ground as soon as we can afterwards. We shoot for between November and Thanksgiving, because we have to try to capture as much of the rain as we can. We do plant some of them as plugs, and I'll go into a little bit more detail with that later. And then about 3 years and 4 months later, after it actually is sown onto the ground, it's grown enough to burn. So we've had a lot of failures with burning too soon, killing all the wiregrass, failures waiting too long. So we've got this amazing window where we know about 3 years, 4 months after it was sown, burn it. And it's just this incredibly lush, and you'll see a picture of that afterwards. We also learned that we had to do a lot of site prep. The windrows that we worked with, remove all the sand pine, literally level the humps, the actual windrows themselves, spread them down, get them down. A lot of soil disturbance, it's not perfect. A lot of stuff comes in, a lot of weeds, but we realized that it was key to remove the really thick, woody, herbaceous stuff, get it out of there. Prepare the seedbed for the seeds themselves. Some people didn't like that because, and you know how this is, all of us involved in resource management, what do people don't like? They don't like change. They don't like in this place when they were driving down these rural roads, they saw these beautiful sand pines, and then all of a sudden, if they're gone and the ground looks like that, there's a lot of people, angry people writing. And so be prepared in this business to deal with people and try to explain that this is a long-term restoration process. But we found the better it was taken down to the ground, the better it is for the seeds. Seed production. So, all right, we want to grow our own seeds on these sites. So we actually have a couple of plots within what we call our Garden of Eden plot. A little side note, actually people thought the Garden of Eden was in the Apalachicola Bluffs and Ravines Preserves. That's an odd little sign. When you go to there, you'll see a sign that someone put up years ago that calculated that's where the biblical Garden of Eden was, in the Apalachicola Bluffs and Ravines Preserves. So there you go. So that site actually had less disturbance in the windrows, so we used that really as our farming site. We really densely packed that with wiregrass, and so we realized that there's 12 10 meter by 10 meter plots we harvest per year, resulted, it burned in May and June, resulted in the highest quantity of viable seed. So we actually have these little farming sites dedicated to getting most of the seeds from there. Seed collection, just the nice flail vat harvester. Who here has used these before? What do y'all think about those? Work well. I mean, we used to have people go out there by hand and collect wiregrass seed, you can only torture volunteers so much. And the prison laborers, even then, they were like, really? I'm in jail and you're making me do this? So even they didn't want to do that. So these flail vacs work very well. And there's PTO models, there's ATV models based on how wide or how small your area is. Usually we collect it between November 1st and Thanksgiving. And then we found it's really, really important to clean the seeds that were collected because the machines that put the seeds down get stuck and hung up with all kinds of stems and all kinds of stuff in their sticks. So we just, this looks real fancy, but we just use the screen, literally hand sort the seed, and you can see the bottom pile is all nice and fluffy, and the stuff on top is the stuff that's actually sort of staying above. And that's a view of our seed storage. I think the Forest Service uses coolers to store their seed. We don't. We put them in a dry bay, and it's actually pretty impressive to see how much seed there is. We try to mix it up best we can, and because that seed itself basically starts to generate heat inside there, so we try to just keep it moving and moving, and we just try to get it out as soon as we can. And so once the site prep is done on days where there's low wind, when it doesn't rain, because the rain tends to have the seeds stick to the wheels of that machine, we try to get out as much seed as we can. And I see this was about 9 pounds per acre of seed mix is what it comes to. These grasslander machines, there's big ones. Who here has used grasslanders too to sow seeds? Now, they work very well, but you don't want to do that on a wet day, because all those wheels do is then collect the seeds. And we found that those little discs on the back, we take those out and replace them only because the sites we're sowing seed on are full of stumps, and it tends to really hang those up. So we use these little spring tines on the back of that to collect the stuff as we go. But it works very, very well. You can get wider machines, but some of our sites are so narrow, we just do multiple passes with the grasslander, and puts down lots of good seeds. So these are basically sort of, we had some money from the Department of Transportation to sort of study this, and we found that the wiregrass and these other sandhill species really they successfully established using direct seeding, more so than plugs. Increased seed contact with soil benefits the wiregrass germination and establishment. That just makes sense. If anyone has even planted a tomato garden in their backyard or whatever, get the seeds down on the soil, push them in. Bless them. I know, the seeds make you sneeze. It happens to us all the time. Regular irrigation to supplement the rainfall doesn't increase ground cover germination or establishment. We had folks really concentrated on making sure it was done at a certain rainfall time. It turns out it doesn't matter that much as long as there's some. And then the sowing of a cover crop excuse me, doesn't increase the ground cover establishment either. So we wanted to really stick with that wiregrass. We wanted to do something with just, all right, how about we just simply put in wiregrass plugs and some seeds in a few places on these windrows, and then let the wiregrass do the work. Why do we have to be out there sowing seeds? The wiregrass will grow, we'll burn it, it'll seed, it'll just go crazy. It didn't work. It didn't work at all. We planted that wiregrass along these rows thinking we'd have these wonderful, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 acre plots of wiregrass. It didn't work. It doesn't spread very far on its own. I think, because I used to work at Wacow Springs State Park where we did something similar 15 years ago, I think we were amazed at how old some of those wiregrass plants are, and how long it takes for those to naturally spread. Truth of it is, we don't have a lot of time, so we want that wiregrass to spread quickly, because again, the key with any kind of fire management with low intensity, high frequency fire is ground cover, contiguous ground cover. So we learned that that didn't really work very well. Like I mentioned before, we do plant plugs because there's some places you can't drive the grassland. There's some places you have to, like on the ravine slopes, you have to actually go in there and plant the plugs. It jump starts your process very quickly. All of a sudden you've got, not a seedling, but not a seed, but you've got a plug. We developed a soil mix that was 85% pine bark and 15% of this granite fines, a lot of fertilizer, to really get them going. We didn't want to baby them, but we wanted them to grow quickly and then throw them into the ground where they would be exposed to the elements. We really wanted these to be, we wanted the best of both. Grow them quick and then put them out into the tough, harsh environment of the sandhill. It seems to work pretty well. But it is very, very, very labor intensive. These are alternative spring break students, which we use. We use prison labor, alternative spring break students. Although funny, when I was doing spring break in the 80s, I never wanted to do this. Hey, spring break, want to go to Daytona Beach or plant wiregrass plugs? But we have a lot of kids that are really enthusiastic about doing this, and so to me, this is really cool that we're doing this, because these are the next generation of, foresters, of conservation folks, of burners. I mean, these kids, and they're really excited about doing this. 12 to 18 students working for about 8 hours a day, we can get about 100,000 plugs processed. Quality is key. We go down to each individual seed, and there's a way you can feel it to see if it's really, really good plant. It takes a long, long time. Costs about $7,000 to $8,000 an acre when all is said and done. If you wanted to actually plant out an acre of plugs, that's what it would cost. Again, good for really specific areas, not for large-scale restoration. You wouldn't want to do, you know, a 500-acre unit by doing this. It would be too insane. We do about 3 to 5 plugs per square meter. We want them to get close together, and again, because we're thinking like we are, we want to burn that. So the closer they are together, the quicker they all are to carry fire. They're sown in March, and then they're planted when the root development is complete, usually midsummer. But we've had little success with August plantings, I think, because it's just they're too stressed. And then they can be burned, third growing season after planting. The seeds themselves, when do you want to collect it? You know, again, you burn it during the growing season, and then that fall, quickly collect that seed. And these are a cool series of slides. You know, something and I'll just be honest with you, we don't do this very well. We don't take a lot of good photo points. We should, we don't. I would love more people to do it. If you guys have the time, please document what you do. We don't do it well enough. But this is January 2008. Clear cut, we have the windrows removed. All right, so we sowed seeds on this site, planted some plugs. This is what it looks like in May 2011, 40 months later. So from that to that. It's pretty impressive. We also put some longleaf pine seedlings in there as well. And then, after a growing season fire, what you're looking at this is what it looks like now in November 2011. That's pretty darn cool. This is, I just look at that and go, man, because if you look at what it used to be, now you've got this, that's incredible success. So to me, we've really finally gotten a good handle on restoring this community's wiregrass and herbaceous component. We've really got this thing down. But again, this is only what we know for this sandhill, on these sites. Will this work in other places? Like say South Florida sandhill, which is a little bit different? Maybe, we don't know. But we've got this down to the cost, down to the process and time. So I think it's a pretty cool success story. But this points out, those of you who manage sites, if you have some portions of your sites that you can give up for this kind of research, please do it, because all of us can benefit from that. So that's what it looks like across the street at Torreya State Park. And those of you who know that state park know it was just nothing but sand pines, sand pines, sand pines. Nothing against sand pines, but we have a lot of sand pines in that area. We really don't have a lot of this stuff. So that's all I've got. If you have any serious questions, definitely email Brian Pelk, bpelk@tnc.org.